Hey everybody, welcome to Global Entrepreneurship Week Fort Worth 2021. We've got a great guest today, but before we get to that, I just want to highlight the purpose of this series of particular sessions that we host is we always think it's a great idea to hear from other communities, some of the successes they've had in building their startup communities, but also some of the failures. Because we're in the early stages of trying to propel our startup ecosystem here in Fort Worth, and we love new ideas. We love to put some crazy stuff out there to see what works and get some traction, and also try to avoid the big thuds. Right? Nobody likes to fail, but it happens, right? Even the most talented people, sometimes what you do just doesn't work, and you got to learn from it and move on. So with that in mind, today I'm with Jake Hamann, a longtime resident of Peoria, Illinois. He's been an ecosystem builder in that area for a long time. He recently moved here to Dallas-Fort Worth, and he recently transitioned out of being an ecosystem builder, and now he's a founder, which is the best success story I could ever think of, right?
Yes. As I say, eating my own dog food.
That's exactly right. So why don't we just jump right into it, and just let's talk about Peoria, give us a sense of Peoria. And I've got a couple of stats here that I'm going to share with the crowd, because I do feel like Peoria is one of those cities, if you're not from the Midwest, even if you are from the Midwest, you might not know where Peoria, Illinois is. So it's in the middle of Illinois. It's about halfway between Chicago and St. Louis. I would say it's on a river and a major interstate, but the interstate is definitely not one that you would use to cross the country.
No.
So it doesn't get a lot of cross-country traffic, right?
Right.
So for all intents and purposes, it's kind of an isolated community, right? And I think when you think about it, it's almost a great example of small-town entrepreneurship and what you can do in small communities. Yeah. And a lot of people might think that's limited, but it's not. It can be really powerful. Yeah. They've got about 100,000 people, right, in Peoria, and then the metro area is around 300,000?
Yeah, 3 or 4.
Yeah. A couple other communities. So tell us about the early days. How did you even get into this?
Gosh, I don't even know where to start. But yeah, Peoria's got an interesting history. There's that whole term, will it play in Peoria, right? That's been
Groucho Marx, right?
Yeah.
I think that's Groucho Marx.
It might have been. Yeah, you're probably right. It's sad I don't know that. But we do have somewhat of a storied history back, and I'll kind of talk through that as we go. It is Interstate 74, which not a lot of people know about, but Interstate 80 is kind of north of there, and it's an interesting system, or kind of the region, because we've got Bloomington Normal, which Rivian Automotive, the electric truck manufacturer, is about 40 minutes away. State Farm corporate headquarters are about 40 minutes away. Caterpillar's world headquarters were in Peoria, but most of their manufacturing's there in Peoria. Peoria used to be the whiskey capital of the world. The world's most whiskey. They had a Hiram Walker plant that was there. So it's got its storied history, and I always like to say too, Peoria's kind of that 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? Everybody knows somebody that's from Peoria or has a contact from there. There's an optometrist in town that has coined Peoria as the geographical center of the universe because of that, because everybody has somebody there. But for me personally, I grew up there, was born there, grew up there. My first foray into, the corporate world was in 2006 or so. I got involved in working at a direct mail manufacturer place that designed direct mail, and I don't talk about this a lot to a lot of people, and I guess I'm putting it out there now, but I was responsible for the mortgage crisis in 2008. I'll just not personally, well, kind of personally, but the place,
you sent half of those mailers, didn't you?
Well, I designed most of them actually. So Countrywide, all those banks that you remember the names, they all IndyMac Bank, we were designing the flyers, little fake credit cards, and everything, and they were mailed out of Peoria to millions of homes across the United States. So not that I'm proud of it, but I had a small part in that.
Yeah, I think it's a great lesson to learn
Yeah.
early in your career, though. It's like sometimes you just go to work and you turn your brain off. Like,
Yeah.
should I even be doing this? Is this a good idea for a business? Do I want to be involved in that? You don't think of that when
No.
you're right out of school, starting your first job, right?
Not at all. And then it ended up being like long-term care flyers and all kinds of fun, exciting stuff. But anyhow, I worked there, and then I had an opportunity to go work at Caterpillar. And that's kind of from a historic perspective, in
Yeah.
Peoria, you either you worked at Caterpillar, right? That was the thing. You bled yellow blood. It was a generational thing. Everybody worked there. We have a pretty strong hospital system and healthcare system that has been there for a long time. Komatsu, interestingly enough, a competitor to Cat, is there as well.
Yeah.
And they build a lot of stuff there. So that's kind of where everybody worked.
Yeah,
So,
well, and let's be clear. I mean, Caterpillar, amazing company.
absolutely.
They create an amazing product for the marketplace, right? And Caterpillar historically has been one of those companies where you work there your entire career,
Right.
right?
Yep.
It's just, they've got a great culture, and they've got a lot of great stuff going for them. And I think, does that bleed into the culture of the town a little bit?
Absolutely. I think it bled into at least what existed when I got started in ecosystem building in terms of what entrepreneurs were there, right? They
Yeah.
were the ones that were supporting Caterpillar, whether it was directly or indirectly.
Suppliers.
There was a supply chain, or it was, the hospitality industry that was supporting them, or whatever it might have been. So, yeah, I was in this job doing direct mail, and I was like, okay, here's my golden ticket, my opportunity to finally go do what everybody else does and go work at Caterpillar. So I went in and worked there as a consultant to start. That's kind of how a lot of people got started, a red badger, as they called them. So I went and worked in their service training department as a consultant, and I think I was about, a year in, and they offered me full time. I was like, which is what everybody wants.
Yeah, sure.
And at the time, I was like, no, I don't know if I want to do that. Like, the money's awfully good as a consultant,
Yeah.
working on my own. I don't have to report to anybody. So no thanks. Thanks, but no thanks. But I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. Little did I know that, 6 months later, they would let all the red badgers go because of the direct mail that I designed.
Right.
But because of the downturn, they let everybody go.
Yeah.
So I, lost my job. I lost my house. Lived with my mom in the garage. Like, it was crazy. So went through that, and then worked a couple other jobs. Worked at a marketing agency, at an ad agency, one of the big ad agencies in town. It just so happened they supported Caterpillar. But I reestablished some relationships that I had when I was there before. They asked me to come back and work in their digital marketing department. Did that for about 6 months, and then started my own company in 2012. And then shortly, really quickly, as we got started in 2012, we realized that we were having a hard time finding employees. So people that we like to say, in air quotes, got it,
Yeah.
right? From an innovation perspective, we were having a hard time finding people. So I don't remember how I got connected, but I got connected to an organization called Startup America. And there's a guy out of Chicago, and they had a listing essentially of all these startups in Illinois. And there was not a one on there from Peoria. It was all, suburbs in Chicago and that kind
Yeah.
of thing. I'm like, okay, there's clearly companies here. So I met with them. I talked to Kevin Willer, who actually started 1871, the big co-working space up in Chicago. He's like, yeah, I'm doing this Startup America thing, representing Illinois. I'm getting ready to leave 1871. Do you want to do this? I'm like, sure. I don't know what that means, but okay. So that immediately, and this was in 2012, 2013, got me exposed to the national movement of entrepreneurial ecosystem building, which didn't really have a name yet.
Yeah, it was a new thing. It hadn't caught on at Kaufman yet.
No.
I mean, it was just kind of this nascent thing that nobody really knew about it. I mean, I was in the Bay Area at the time, and we didn't talk about it in those terms.
Right. So yeah, it was just kind of happening at the grassroots level. People were starting to come out of the woodwork, and then we ended up having a first summit in Phoenix, Arizona, and got to meet some other ecosystem builders.
Yeah.
Right. So we've kind of talked about what it was, what we were trying to do, those types of things. So we went back to Peoria, and because we were having trouble finding employees, but also knew that there were other companies there based on what we were hearing from the Startup America thing, that there was nobody from Peoria. We knew they were there. We went to our county economic development director for the county, and say, hey, here's what we're trying to do. you have any money?
Right.
And interestingly enough, at least I don't remember where we hit in the budget cycle or whatever. He said, yeah, I've got $150,000 as a grant. We'll give to you guys. And we had a plan of what we were going to do. So we used that money and did a bunch of great things with that. So first thing we did is we opened a co-working space.
Yep.
The first one.
Space. Yep.
So we had The Nest was the name of our co-working space. We renovated an old historic second floor of an old historic building. And then the interesting thing where I actually met Cameron from here was somebody introduced us to 1 Million Cups.
Yep.
And said, hey, there's this weekly meeting, this gathering thing they're doing in Kansas City and a couple other cities. You might want to consider that.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to Kansas City. I met Cameron. I met Nate Olson, who worked for him, and we signed up. And I think we were the 11th city, to do 1 Million Cups.
Nice. For reference, what year was this?
That would have been 2013.
2013.
I
Okay,
believe,
and then
yeah.
What year did you establish the co-working space? Was it same year?
It was in 2013 as well. Yep. So I started my company in 2012 and then established a co-working space and started Peoria, which was the nonprofit in 2013.
Gotcha.
So that kind of goes back.
So we're well out of that phase of the housing market crash and the repercussions in the market because, as you know, a lot of startups are formed right after a recession, right?
Yep.
People lose their jobs and they start a company, and a lot of those are very successful. So
absolutely, yeah.
But this is past that. Now, is Peoria lagging behind other communities in that recovery?
I think in some regards, yes. I think Peoria, a lot of Midwestern towns in general, right, are typically 10, 20 years behind everything. And I think that was definitely apparent then. But there was an interesting thing going on at the same time was our economic development organizations were going through, they got completely dismantled and we're going through a rebuilding process. So the timing was really good. They brought in some outside consultants and did this whole asset-based economic development strategy of looking at, which I thought was a great idea, of let's look at all the great things that we have to offer across our region and capitalize on those instead of what we don't have. So it brought to light, what we did have to offer, a lot of patents. We had a lot of doctorate resources there because of the university, and we have an ag lab. One of the 2 USDA ag labs was there. So there was a lot that we had to build upon, but most of the entrepreneurial and innovation efforts prior to that had been very institutional. They were biotech, real high-tech type of stuff. There wasn't a whole lot focused on emerging startups or even Main Street business type of stuff. You had your traditional chamber and those types of things, but there wasn't a focused effort on the startup community at that time.
Gotcha.
It was very